So imagine you're holding a map of your life, right? And everywhere it says marginalization or failure, someone suddenly hands you a decoder ring. And with that ring, those perceived societal failures suddenly translate to divine royalty. Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're looking at a stack of sociological research, religious studies, and behavioral analyses to map out the tactical recruitment engine of the Great Millstone, or GMS. They're a rigid faction of the radical Hebrew Israelite movement.
Yeah, exactly. And to really understand GMS, you have to look at their roots in the 1960s. So they were born out of a Harlem ideology known as First West. That movement looked at the deep racial tensions and disenfranchisement of the era and proposed a radical theological solution. Basically, the Black, Hispanic, and Native Americans are the true, literal descendants of the ancient Israelites.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because it's not just an alternative historical claim. I mean, it's an active recruitment strategy. Our research shows GMS leans heavily on specific biblical texts, especially Deuteronomy 28. That chapter talks about a chosen people being punished with terrible curses, specifically being sent into slavery on ships.
Right. The ships part is huge for them.
Yeah, exactly. So GMS points to that and says, look at history. Who does that sound like? You aren't cursed because you're inferior. You're experiencing this because you are literally the fallen, chosen people of the Bible.
And that cognitive flip, that is the absolute engine of their growth. It takes the trauma of marginalized communities and just turns it into proof of latent supremacy. But our sources emphasize this isn't a passive religion you just happen to join.
Right, it's highly structured.
Very. It's a 4-stage behavioral engineering funnel. And it's completely designed to turn curious babes, which is their term for newcomers, into disciplined soldiers.
And the top of that funnel is incredibly intense. Think of it like an aggressive theological flash mob. You're walking down the street and there's a GMS camp. They're in military style or biblical uniforms, using amplified sound, and they actively confront passersby.
Yeah, they do not hold back at all.
No, they don't. They use aggressive Socratic questioning to publicly deconstruct a person's traditional beliefs. They basically call mainstream Christianity a slave religion.
Which creates what sociologists call an identity shock. So by publicly dismantling a recruit's previous worldview, GMS creates a sudden cognitive void. The person is left questioning their history, their religion, their reality, all of it.
But a street argument isn't enough to build an army, right? Nature abhors a vacuum, so GMS fills that void online. In our notes, we see how they expertly hijack social media algorithms.
Oh, 100%.
Like in 2022, when celebrities like Kanye West and Kyrie Irving started signal-boosting similar rhetoric, GMS just rode that wave. They captured algorithmic traffic looking for more information and funneled those seekers into meticulous, hours-long sit-down YouTube lessons.
Right, because they positioned themselves as the advanced disciplined school. Like for anyone who just had their worldview shaken up by a celebrity tweet or a street corner argument, there's the next step.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. I get how a YouTube rabbit hole pulls you in, sure. But how do they actually convince an everyday person they belong to an ancient Middle Eastern tribe?
Well, they don't have to guess. GMS introduces this powerful visual tool called the 12 Tribes chart. It's honestly a semiotic masterpiece. They use a mix of pseudo-history and selective scripture to map ancient biblical tribes directly onto modern ethnicities.
Wow, wait, really? How does that work?
So they claim the tribe of Ephraim specifically correlates to modern Puerto Ricans, or the tribe of Gad maps directly to North American Indians.
Oh, wow. So it completely bypasses the historical trauma and erasure of the transatlantic slave trade.
Yeah.
You aren't just learning a new theology. You're being handed a majestic, unbroken lineage right there on a printed banner.
Exactly. It offers an immediate, divinely ordained pan-Israelite brotherhood, and one that predates colonization entirely.
I'm hung up on the family aspect, though. I mean, it's one thing to watch a YouTube video and feel empowered by a chart. It's another to go home and tell your family that everything they believe is a lie. How do they stop recruits from just buckling under the social pressure from their own relatives?
Yeah, that brings us to the total immersion phase. So GMS engineers physical and cultural isolation so the new identity doesn't unravel. Recruits are mandated to adopt visible aesthetic markers, like growing specific beards or wearing fringes with a blue border.
Which already sets you apart visually.
Right. But more importantly, they're required to reject Gentile holidays. That includes Christmas, Thanksgiving, and even birthdays.
Geez, that forces a massive wedge. I mean, you physically cannot go to your mom's house for Christmas dinner anymore without violating your new doctrine.
Exactly. It creates instant, purposeful isolation from old social circles. But retention isn't just about isolation. It's about fear. The name Great Millstone Actually references the biblical verse Matthew 18, verse 6.
Right, which is pretty ominous.
Very. Leaving the group means facing a public shunning, having members make response videos calling you a demon, and the existential threat of having a literal millstone tied around your neck by God. It's total retention through communal dependency.
So what does this all mean for you listening? When you look at the mechanics of GMS, it's a stark illustration of how high-demand movements weaponize ancient texts, like the King James Bible, and they exploit very real modern societal fractures to construct a bulletproof identity.
Right, because when the mainstream map of your life looks bleak, and someone hands you a lens that turns your suffering into a crown, well, it's easy to see why someone would put it on. Just to be clear, we are absolutely not endorsing these views, just analyzing the source material.
Absolutely. We're strictly just looking at the mechanics of how it all works.
Which leaves us with a final, somewhat unsettling thought to explore. If our modern social media algorithms intrinsically reward this kind of high-conflict, absolute certainty content, how can mainstream academic or religious institutions ever hope to compete for the attention of those feeling discarded by society?